thoughts not the problem. The feeling's not the problem. The body sensation's not the problem. What's the problem? The action you take on behalf of it. That's the problem.
My guest today is Michelle Maidenberg, a trailblazing psychotherapist, author, professor, and nonprofit co-founder who has made it her mission to guide individuals toward emotional resilience and conscious living.
I really teach people to understand their brain and their mind, how their mind works.
What was your first awakening moment? How did you even get into this?
We all have a story. What led me to it was my own life. And I have to say that it is an ongoing journey and process.
How do we catch the ways that avoidance is disguising itself in modern life?
How do we break this habit? You have to interrupt the thoughts because you're trying to change the brain habit, right? And whatever we put energy, effort, and intention into, we strengthen.
What is the action you take to ignite that global shift toward harmony?
We teach people about history and math, but we don't teach them how to manage their emotions, for example, or frustration tolerance, or all these things that are critical to our human existence. I think that we need to do a better job at teaching people about the structure of our brain relative to our survival instinct, because that speaks for everything. I will give you a way to do it for free, and that's
Welcome to Compassiviste Dialogues. I'm your host, Ali Horiat. My goal in this program is to educate our audience about various global issues and how we can help. My guest today is Michelle Maidenberg, a trailblazing psychotherapist, author, professor, and nonprofit co-founder who's made it her mission to guide individuals toward emotional resilience and conscious living. From teaching mindfulness at NYU to reaching millions through her Psychology Today blog, Michelle brings a unique blend of clinical wisdom and real-world insight. Her latest book, Ace Your Life, challenges us to confront avoidance, step into alignment, and take back our power. Michelle also co-founded Thru My Eyes, a nonprofit that helps individuals with life-threatening illnesses create free legacy videos for their loved ones, an emotional and spiritual offering that transcends therapy and enters the sacred. In this conversation, we dig deep into the psychological habits that hold us back. But more importantly, what I want to know is how to actually break free of these habits. So, hello, Dr. Maidenberg, Michelle, and welcome to Compassiviste Dialogues.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I want to start way back before you became a therapist, an educator, nonprofit, none of that. I want to know, what was your first awakening moment? What was your first interest in human behavior, emotional pain, mindfulness? How did you even get into this? Because I have friends who are psychiatrists and psychologists, and when I go back, some of them have real attachment stories, trauma, other things that they kind of healed through themselves. Others not. Others were, I went to school because everybody went to school. I took psychology. Then I got interested. One thing led to another. I saw some inequalities and I got, deeper activated into it. And then here I am. This is who I am today. So what's your backstory?
We all have a story, by the way.
Yeah, we all do.
Everyone has a story. And it's so interesting when people decide on what career they're choosing. I always find it so fascinating because when I kind of do their history and talk to them, it's so clear whether it's characteristics that led them there or passions or whatever the case is, or history, right? So for me, I had no one in my family at all or anybody that I knew that was in the helping professions, or mental health professions at all. What led me to it was my own life. And I have to say that it is an ongoing journey and process. I decided I was seeing a lot of inner child challenges come up for myself in the past couple of months, actually. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do a 6-day retreat, and I'm doing that next week, which I'm so excited about. So it's an ongoing journey. I really want to say that it never ends. And, there are times in life where it kind of rears its ugly head, so to speak, and it reminds you, like taps you on your shoulder and says, sweetie, you need a little bit of healing in that area, right? When the triggers are formative, or when you're getting activated or whatever, because like our triggers really let us know where we need to heal. So for me, my parents divorced when I was 3, which is really young. And I had pretty significant childhood trauma. More, I would say, not abuse necessarily, but more on the neglect side of things. There was a lot of just adversity as I was growing up. So for myself, I always, I remember, and it's painful to even think about, but I remember being a little child and sitting in my bed and crying and hugging my teddy bear. And I remember saying to myself, which is fascinating to me because I had resilience even at that young age. I said to myself, and I don't even know where I got it, to be honest with you, but I used to say to myself, this too shall pass. This is not my life. I'm going to create the life that I want. And I remember saying that so young. And it really started, my 4 grandparents were all Holocaust survivors. Mm. So there was a lot, and most of their families, immediate families were murdered. The stories that you hear, they literally were on the line where they either went to go work or to the gas chambers. And my grandparents all went to work because they were at that age where they're able to work. Most of their family members went to the gas chambers. So we're talking about very significant trauma. And that's that's my parents. They were raised with parents who came out of the Holocaust. So that says it all. I don't even have to go further, but I heard stories from when I was a little child about details of concentration camps. And one of my grandmothers specifically was very verbal and expressive, and she used to tell story after story. Now, what's so fascinating about that to me also is, to me, it was just a story, because I heard it so many times, and we used to giggle, my cousins and I, and we used to be like, oh, here she goes again, telling that story. But I didn't understand how it was seeping into my neural networks and affecting me. And now I realize it. Now I realize why I have such a deep level of compassion and empathy for people who experience trauma, both for my own trauma and the traumas of my ancestry and, all of those things. So all of this formed me, and when I was in high school, I took an AP psychology course, and I got an award at graduation. And I remember I literally felt like I won an Academy Award. It was so my journey really has evolved, and now it's really about the types of treatments that I do. I'm always looking for professional development. So I'm doing an IFS training. I'm looking to get certified in IFS, which is internal family systems. But I have EMDR and ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy, and CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. So I do a lot of somatic work and mindfulness, but I'm always looking to add on to my toolbox with in mind that every person is different and they need different tools, right? So I have to kind of really I have to feel consciously that I'm able to give people the tools that they need. And that's going to require me to stretch myself too.
Wow, that's a lot of stories, especially with your grandparents, because whenever I encounter people who have that in their family, it touches me because I'd never met a Jewish person. In the sense of, I've actually interacted with Jewish people not knowing they were Jewish or not seeing any part of their religion because, being born in Dubai, growing up in the 80s, there wasn't that interaction. It's not like now where it's open and the countries are interacting and Jewish people can come and go and whatnot. So when I moved, to Europe and to Canada, I was in Toronto, big Jewish population. The school I went to, big Jewish population. I started making friends and slowly started going to their homes. And that was, of course I'd studied about the Holocaust in school, but this much, the facts that they give you, the dates and numbers, and that's it. Even today, even in the West, it's so lacking in education. And, that the stories traumatized me because I had a couple of friends whose grandparents survived it. And when you hear that story and then you watch the movies, you go to the theater, you're watching Schindler's List, popcorn, whatever, you see people watching it like a movie because it doesn't connect. But when you connect with someone who you place into that role, you start crying because it's, you just can't, right? Because somebody who actually was going through that. And it's really, really difficult. So you hearing these as a child, it must impress on you somehow.
But I didn't even know, I
Yeah,
thought it
you
was
didn't know
like
then,
normal.
but when you grow, like you realize how it impressed on you.
What really was so significant for me is realizing like how it actually affected me. I didn't realize it.
Mm.
It affected me in such profound ways that it led me to the profession that I'm currently in, like literally. And I didn't even, like, if my grandmothers were alive today, and I was very, very fortunate, they lived really long lives. They lived almost to 100, both of, my grandparents. So lucky. But, I wish I could have a conversation with them today to thank them, to really thank them for giving me that gift because I wouldn't have had it otherwise. They made such an impression on me. And I have to say, I dedicated my book to them, my women warriors in my life,
Mm.
because I asked my grandmother once, I sat down with her and I said, how did you survive that? Like, cause I do a lot of trauma work, but I said,
Mm.
how did you do that? And she, what she said to me? And it was like, wow. She said, that wasn't life. She said, that wasn't life. We had a life. We lived, in homes and we went to school and we had neighbors and friends communities we were part of. Like that was, I don't know what that was. She said that we knew that that's not life. And that kept us hopeful and, having this meaningful wishfulness and hopefulness to live and right. And I was like, wow, and then somebody once said to me, I don't understand. Like, why didn't they leave? They knew something was going on. Why didn't they leave? And, I once asked my grandmother that too. And she said, could we ever imagine, imagine somebody coming over to you and saying, somebody's going to take you out of your home and this is what's going to happen to you. Would you believe them?
No.
She said, there was no way for us to believe that anything like that was ever happen. We were like living like you were, like literally, like there was no way for that. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense, So anyway, I actually videotaped through my foundation. I videotaped all my grandparents. So I have stories recorded and it is like mind blowing, and it's interesting. My grandfather, I know we're segueing off of this, but my grandfather had a touch of Parkinson's and dementia before he died. And when I went to go, and he never spoke about the war ever because he was the only one left in his entire family that wasn't murdered. And he had such significant trauma, such significant trauma. And that day when I went to video him, he was completely alert. And he was talking about stories that I never heard in my entire life. So yeah, like it was meant to be. It was the universe, like, again, giving me a gift. So I have so many like amazing stories. But anyway, going back to what we were saying, I love what I do. I wake up every morning and I am so thrilled to go to work. And for me, it's not work. It's connecting to people and helping people in their lives to live a meaningful life. And to me, I go to bed every night and I'm so appreciative that I get to touch people in the way that I do. And I'm open and expressing that. I really am in my work. I was taught, we're taught, I think, formatively in our education that we have to be distanced and, boundaries. And of course there are boundaries. Don't get me wrong. But over the years with my comfort and really getting into myself and my comfort in kind of my treatment and everything, I am so much more relational and connected. Like even yesterday, I'll give you an example. I was working with somebody and he was telling me a story of how he goes to visit his mother in Florida and his mother's elderly and he helps to take care of her. And him and his wife, unfortunately, are having a little bit of a hard time. And, helping him with that. And he was telling me that the wife complains, that he does things without her and he goes off to Florida without her and everything. And I stopped and I said, is it okay for me to share another side of that? Because I have a different impression about that. And he said, what? And I said, when you talk to me about going to Florida, I am so touched by your kindness and by your warmth and thoughtfulness that it touches me every single time. And he looked at me like in shock almost, because he's always getting criticized for it. And I said, the fact that you go there and you're so dedicated to your mother, that you check up on her and that you make sure like that your whole weekend when you go is dedicated towards providing and helping her and attuning to her is so touching to me. And I want to share that with you. And if you saw the look on his face, I mean, it was, and he looked at me, he goes, thank you so much for saying that. Cause no one's ever telling him that.
Mm-hmm. No one's ever been appreciative of that.
Yeah. It's like criticizing and critical and whatever. Right. And then he second guesses himself,
Yes,
and it's like,
yes,
no,
people, you're right.
And then I said to him, what are you doing when you're going to visit your mother? Cause you have to put it in a context, right? And I said, you're aligning with your values, right? So if you align with your values and you're able to stipulate for yourself, no, not for anybody else, I am aligning, right, with, my family values by going and being there with my mother. It doesn't matter what anybody else says about it. It's irrespective. You in your own body could feel so at rest and peaceful that you're doing something that's aligning with your value, and feel so grateful for you and who you are and the person you represent. And anyone could say anything and poof, bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As you're telling me that story, I'm reminded, because I watched your, I don't know how recent it was, but you had a TED Talk, a lot of times we kind of try to go around the whole emotional thing, and we try to avoid, right? And this is taking me there. We when you said, nobody says that to him, or he just, puts it all inside. Sometimes, we're encouraged to kind of distract ourselves or find something else, or not really address the issue. And then we don't realize we're avoiding these things. I mean, that was what I took from your talk, right? We start forgetting that we're even in avoidance. And so, can I ask you, how do we catch that? How do we catch, the ways that avoidance is disguising itself in modern life? Because there's so many ways to distract ourselves today that we don't even know we're distracting ourselves from what when we're doing something else, right? And how do you kind of work through that? Because that's a major issue, right?
So I'm going to put it in a context for you because it's really important to understand it. And I really teach people to understand their brain and their mind, how their mind works. It's so essential. And when I do this kind of psychoeducation, they're like, oh my God, really? Like it makes sense now. So our brains are habitualized to certain thoughts, feelings, body sensations, right? And emotions. That is so formative in our upbringing and our development when we're kids. Okay. So I could tell you that for myself, and I'll use myself as an example, I am so comfortable with anger. Most people will say that they're not comfortable with anger. But for me, because I didn't have an outlet to express myself, what I did is I had a lot of fears because my safety was compromised. And I developed a lot of anger and frustration over that. And the way that I grounded myself at that time, because it was a survival instinct, to feel more in control and powerful and empowered, again, false sense, of course, was to be angry because I couldn't do anything. I was a kid, right? So if I cursed them out or I wished them whatever, or if I judged them or if I whatever, that was the way that I was able to be in control. Guess what? My mind gets habitualized to that. It's so used to doing that it continues to do that and continues to do that and continues to do that into my adulthood. Because of our brain is addicted, right? It's kind of like I compare our brain to a PC. When we look at our PC, we're like, wow, especially with AI now and ChatGPT, whoa, right? Like you think it has a brain, like you're convinced, like how does it do this? And you say to yourself, how does it do this? It's impossible. Like, where's the brain in there? You know what? But it only basically does whatever you tell it to do, whatever you program it to do. Our brains are very reptilian. It's the same thing. Our brains are habituated based on our experience, based on our history, based on our genetic predispositions, and on and on and on. There's 1,000 different elements. But it's not because it's a well-oiled kind of, programmed, no, it's not. It's very, very reptilian. And it is wired to avoid danger and discomfort 24/7. And it takes its job extremely seriously. And that's why we avoid negative and uncomfortable emotions. We will do anything to avoid them. We will deny, we will disregard, we will distract, we will do anything literally to avoid discomfort. And distractions are one part of it. That's what we do. So when you're asking me, how do we break this habit? Awareness, of course, is critical. And also exposure therapy almost to our brain. So I have discovered, because I'm doing a lot of inner child work, I told you right now, that's like kind of my mission right now. I have discovered what thoughts, feelings, and emotions I have habitualized, because I'm very clear about that. But what I've improved on, which is fascinating to me, is I am so keen on recognizing when it comes up in my brain. And you have to interrupt the thoughts, because you're trying to change the brain habit, right? Or else it's going to continue. And whatever we put energy, effort, and intention into, we strengthen. So if you keep putting intention, energy, and effort and intentionality into anger and judgment and frustration, etc., that's going to grow stronger. So when those thoughts come up, I'm like, stop. And I laugh. I literally laugh. I'm like, are you kidding? Like yesterday, it wouldn't stop. Oh my goodness. It would not stop. It was anything to avoid me thinking about what was like upsetting or painful for me that I need to sit in. Anything, like literally my brain was like, woo, rapid fire. And it was literally funny because I kept on saying, stop. I was like, if somebody hears me right now, they're going to think, I don't know what about me. Because I keep telling myself to stop. So I'm slowly breaking the habit by stopping my brain and interrupting that habit. Now, it sounds a lot easier than it is. It takes a lot of intentionality. Let me tell you, a lot. Okay. And what ends up happening is we end up having thoughts about the thoughts, feelings about the feelings, thoughts about the feelings, and feelings about the thoughts. Oh my goodness. I can't tell you how many times this happens. Yesterday, somebody came in and they're like, I don't want to think this way anymore. It's so upsetting. Why does this thought keep coming in my mind? I'm like, who cares? And they're like, what? I'm like, who cares that it comes in your mind? Why is that such a problem? The thought's not the problem. The feeling's not the problem. The body sensation's not the problem. What's the problem? The action you take on behalf of it. That's the problem. Mm-hmm.
Well said.
Yeah. If you heard the thoughts that are in my mind and oh boy, you'd be really scared. I get scared sometimes, but I laugh at myself because it's all fear-based. It's all survival mechanism. It's like, and by the way, I have such gratitude for it because like, if I didn't do what I did when I was a kid, I don't know where I'd be today. Let me tell you, like I needed that. Like it served me well, but now as an adult, I have to lower the volume. It doesn't work the same way anymore. Right. So I was talking to another patient and he was telling me that his spouse put the middle finger up, like, right, threw him the bird, if you want to call it. And I was like, whoa, that's not very respectful, right? I was like, who is that? So he was like, I don't know. That's like, I said, no, that's an adolescent. When we get upset as an adolescent, we do things like that. We don't do that as adults. I'm sorry. We express how we feel. We don't put up our middle finger. Right? It just doesn't work that way. So either she has to do her inner work and really understand the habituation of anger and frustration and disappointment and whatever else there is there. Right? Because it's going to keep repeating and repeating and repeating. And if she's not willing to, you need to decide how that's going to be for you to be in a relationship where you're going to be in, a setting of frustration and anger, right? Yeah. I mean, that's just the bottom line, because it's not anybody else's work to do. It's our work to do.
And I think a lot of times we overcompromise because that's part of the problem is like in the scenario you just mentioned, the person goes back and says, well, she's not going to change. She's going to give me the middle finger again tomorrow over something else. Either I put up with it, either I continue this lifestyle, or I leave. Again, going back to the I leave is that, that reptilian mind comes in and says, no, this is safe. This is the usual. This is your habitat. You know everything here. Don't leave because you don't know what's out there when you leave. So, it becomes an issue.
Well, and it's competing values. That's like a really important piece of this. That's also the other thing that comes up because there's pain and values and pain. So that also gets in the way, right? But again, this has all to do with our emotions. So yes, what ends up happening is the familiar. I know what this is, right? It feels comfortable, right? I have sovereignty over it because, right, I am in control. Not really, right? And I have to deal with it because otherwise I have to confront that these competing values, self-respect, dignity, preservation versus family, right? Yeah. And if both of those values are formative, that is such a difficult decision to make. It's heart-wrenching, right? And yes, what's on the other end of it? The unknown. Like you said, am I ever I want to be in a positive, healthy relationship, but I don't know what's on the other end of that. At least I
Is
have
it
one.
ever going to be better than this? I don't know. Let me just stay here. At least I know what I have.
or this is the biggest, the rationalization. She does that, but yes. But she also does this and that.
Right. Yeah. And that's such a scary place to be. I know exactly what you're talking about there, because when you try to communicate with friends or family members going through something, whether it's financial or personal, doesn't matter what it is, they always try to rationalize when they have nothing more to say. When you really open Pandora's box in front of them and say, this is where you are, they look at it and they, do that whole big take like, oh my God, I never saw this. It's that bad. And then they quickly revert to, but let me rationalize through this because I can't let this situation go. It's too safe. It's too, I have this illusion of being in control. And they start rationalizing, and then you rationalize back and say, no, that's irrational. And it becomes crazy. Where's the winning angle? How do we fix this with people?
Yeah. So I just want to say one thing about what you just said, because it's important. It's not the person, it's the mind. It's not the person that's rationalizing. It's not. Because if you are in yourself, your true self, your authentic self, you wouldn't do that.
No.
You wouldn't do that. If you were in your rational
situation.
Right. Exactly. Yes. If you were your true golden self, right? That's the mind. That's the mind that does that. So, I talk about the mind. Like I even see I'll see teenagers, right? Or young adults. And I do not say you, I say your mind. I literally do, because I want them to get acculturated to understanding that they wouldn't make that decision, and that they have choice, That's the important thing. Your mind could tell you whatever it tells you, but you still have a choice.
Right. And you know what? A lot of this touches on history in a sense, because when you look at our development as civilizations, you go back thousands of years, and think of the commandments, for example. They're choice giving, commandments essentially to help you make that right choice when your mind takes over and does the reptilian thing it does, and you're like, no, I have a right choice. That break in how to maneuver kind of is today's psychiatry in a way, in a much glorified, more educated, more science, more understanding of what's really happening in there, from, the neurons all the way to how you're expressing it here in a way that we all understand. But behind what you're saying here is a lot of science that we've developed. But it goes back to, from the beginning of time, we've been trying through religion, through culture, through community, through so many different ways to kind of expand and grow out of that little shell of fear in so many places, in so many ways.
And it's actually very helpful. I think all of those things could be harmful or could be helpful, for people. Because I think being part of a larger community and connection and, whatever it is, whatever helps you to find meaning in your life, is fine. That's different for different people. There's no judgment about that. There's not a right and a wrong way. As long as you're not imposing it on other people or you're not doing it in a violent, aggressive way, I'm all for whatever works,
right.
But it's really about being with yourself, right? And loving life and really having a deep compassion and love, and efficacy for yourself, for you as a human being. The same love you give towards other humans is seeing yourself in that same light. And that's where it's difficult when we have that type of brain. It becomes very difficult.
Right. And that's where really, I mean, in Ace Your Life, your book, you reaffirm this really powerful, but such a simple concept of, I think you say, unleashing your best self. And,
Yes.
yeah, good. I was right. But essentially that goes back to, the golden rule, or being, the best you can be, and so many variations of this. And to me, my biggest question is, we all know this. We all know that we want to unleash our best self, or we want to be the best person that we can be. And by that, I mean, we want to make the best choices in every choice scenario, so that in that, quantum view of things, we're continuously choosing the best outcome going forward. And if we could do that, wow, we'd be in utter harmony. We'd be living in heaven.
Yes.
But the question is, what gets in the way most often for people trying to make that shift? Because as you look around you, whether you're looking in New York City, further globally, we are nowhere close to that. So,
and if you look around what's going on in today's world, whoa, there's just so much, right?
So
we're
on
flooded.
that deep clinical level, what is it?
Yeah. So listen, we're flooded literally with so much stimulus around us on so many levels that it's constantly streaming. If you think about it, even today, it's a simple thing, but when I was growing up, I couldn't stream news 24/7. I could wake up at 3 a.m. and know what's going on, right? It's not even healthy if you think about it. It just isn't. Our minds need a break, and it needs to rest, to recalibrate, to reset. We're not even given that time or space for that to happen. We're flooded constantly with stimulus, with sociocultural kind of elements coming at us. And there's just so much that our brain cannot handle. Our brain literally cannot handle all that stimulus. It really can't. And I'm talking about on an organic, physiological, level. So, it's taking time and space, right? So if we want to build our bicep, right, we do bicep curls. It's the opposite with our brain. The way that we build strength and muscle is through rest. It's through building space between the thinking and doing, right? Through mindfulness, meditative practice, whatever. There's so many different. I just had a discussion this morning with a friend of mine, and I was talking to her. She was telling me that one of her friends was telling her that she should stop being so hard on herself because she happens to be a good mother and she keeps beating up on herself. So she said to me, my friend said this to me, and I said, yeah. I said, your mind is just fluttering. I said, part of it is, and I talked to her about mindfulness, meditative practice. She goes, I can't do it. It's not my thing. And I said to her, sweetie, I love you, because I know her for over 40 years, but I'm going to call BS. I teach a course, a 15-week course on mindfulness. She's like, no, but I tried it and I can't. I said, really? I go, again, I'm calling BS, because there's thousands and thousands, 15 weeks I teach it. I'm not even kidding. There's thousands of different things you could do to practice. Okay. If one thing doesn't work, just like with exercising your body, not everyone wants to do this. Not everyone wants to do that. You find the thing that works for you that you are going to maintain and sustain. That's all. It's like you go to plan A, B, go down the alphabet. I don't care. So she was like, well, I go, sorry. No. I said, if you want to have a discussion with me on what you could be doing or things to try, that is a discussion I will have with you, but not you telling me that I can't do it. That's just not it. So she said, okay. Because it's so critical. It's so critical. Listen, I'm talking about science. Mm-hmm. Okay. There's science to back it up today. We see changes in the brain structure. We see regeneration of our gray matter in our brain helps with memory and compassion. And I could go on and on. There's thousands and thousands of studies that's validating what I'm saying. We have the ability today, because of our advanced technology, to actually see the change in our brain structure. So I don't even have to prove it, because it's there. The evidence and the science to back it up is there, So that is a really critical piece. I can't say it enough, And I'm not stipulating how someone should go about doing it. Honestly, it's really finding the thing that works. So that is a big part of our transition and change in terms of fighting up against all that we're flooded with. So you asked, how do we, so I use the word unleash. Why? It was a very intentional word that I used, because it is all within us. And I cannot say that enough. We all have our golden shadow, and we're all wonderful, worthy of the best life, the most meaningful life. Every single one of us. I don't care what religion, what race, what color, what creed, whatever. I don't care where you live. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your socioeconomic status is. I don't care. Every single person has that fundamental right. And that's my belief. Okay. And I love every human on this planet. Literally. I do. And I mean it. Because that's my belief system. And I know it to be true, because we all bleed the same. I don't care who you are. We are all made up of the same element. So when I say unleash, I use a comparison in my actual conclusion of my book, but it's like a slab of marble, a slab of concrete marble. You see the slab and it's like, okay, there's a piece of marble. But then if you create and you sculpt, you could make this beautiful masterpiece, right? And that is our job. It's to again, right? We have to slowly but slowly, in an incremental, compassionate way, right? Start to loosen the grip, start to let go, start to allow ourselves permission to be our authentic selves. And that takes work. Listen, I'm going on a 6-day retreat. I love, people think they're like, what is wrong with you that you do that on purpose? What? I love to be challenged emotionally. To me, and being in an environment, in a community environment where people, like-minded people are really getting into their stuff. Oh my gosh. That to me is riveting, Mm-hmm. Not for everybody, because it's painful. It is really heart-wrenching and painful. You will cry your eyes out. Let me tell you, and you feel pain right here, but it is so therapeutic and, so helpful. So ACE, why did I choose ACE? It's acceptance, compassion, and empowerment. So I find that those are the things that keep us stuck. So my TED Talk is about stuckness. It's emotional avoidance, which is why we're stuck. And when I say acceptance, it's self-acceptance. It's acceptance of everything. How many times do we say that person should say that or should do that or the world should look like that or whatever? We're always shoulding all over the place. And I explain what are the barriers to acceptance and how to integrate it. Compassion, same thing. It's self-compassion, but it's compassion towards others, right? Because, we typically are taught how to be compassionate towards others. We're never taught how to be self-compassionate. What does that even look like? When I engage in exercises with my patients on self-compassion, I have to tell you, the discomfort and the resistance that I come up against is like monumental, I have to say. And it makes me sad. I was just kind of terminating my treatment with one of my patients the other day. And you know what she said to me? And I literally had tears in my eyes because it was so touching to me. She said, the one thing that you taught me that has really changed my life so significantly, and I can't thank you enough, was compassion. She said, I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what that looked like. It was so uncomfortable. But when I'm suffering, because all humans suffer, I could be compassionate towards myself. And she said it has improved my relationships with other people so much. But I recognize that I also distance myself from being compassionate towards others because of being, let's say, not tolerant or whatever that comes up for her, And that to me, like her saying that to me was like gold, literally, and that's again, a habitualized thing. So, and then empowerment. It's not enough to have all that, but we need to act. We need to change these habits that I'm talking about, both on a cognitive level, an emotional level, a physiological level, right? And what do we need to do in order to really take that action? And it's not easy. It's not easy to sometimes say, I'm sorry. It's not easy to look at yourself and take accountability. It's not none of those things are easy. Just the other day, I was having a moment where I had to change plans with friends, and it was totally my fault because I overlooked a date that I had on my calendar, and we planned this for months, this event. And I completely, for whatever reason, I was just so like focused on getting what I needed to get done or whatever. And I went over to them and I said, cause I'm a good strategizer, right? So I said, okay, I messed up. Like, that date doesn't work. Could we change it? After they accommodated me, by the way, just saying, right? And they were like, no, it's okay. We could still do it. You don't have to come or whatever. Oh my gosh. If I tell you the woundedness, right? I was like, how could they do that? If they were good friends, then they would like understand that I'm struggling. And I explained to them that this is why I overlooked it. And all this stuff like came into my mind, and I was demonizing them. What? It was my fault. It was my fault. And I said to myself, sweetie, you have to suffer the consequences, but that has nothing to do with them. They have every right to want to keep that date. Like, no one has to jump over sideways for me because I made a mistake, but it was so instantaneous for me to demonize and to should them and to like have these expectations and these attachments to what's right, what's wrong, how I would do things. That's a big thing. How I would do things and how they're wrong because they're not doing it the way I would do it. I mean, I can't even tell you the things that were going through my mind. And then you know what would have happened? I would have sat there for days. They're not good friends. And then when I would see them, I would harbor feelings. I know.
It would ruin a whole friendship, right? It would just destroy everything over a simple, I'll see you the next time we plan stuff.
That was my So I stopped and I was like, who do you think you are, lady? Like to myself, right? Who do you think you are? Attachments? No. Demonizing? No. Like I went down the list and I was like, I'm giving up my attachments. I'm letting go. Let the chips fall as they may. It turns out, which was so interesting, I found myself being more compassionate towards them. And I told them, whatever works for you is fine with me because I know that it was my fault. It's on me. And I am completely okay with accepting whatever consequences comes my way. And guess what happened? They shifted for me in the end.
That normally happens. I can't believe that story because I tell people this all the time. I say, just be compassionate and let that lead the way. And it just grows on people. It's like a virus. If you have a cold and you sneeze in someone's face, they're going to get it. It's the same thing with compassion. It just goes. It's that viral.
Well, going back to the neurotransmitters again, right? I'm so habitualized because of my survival instincts, right? To blame and to whatever, right? But every time that there's a corrective experience like the one I just mentioned, and where I gave up attachments and I gave up, again, control, because that's hard for me. I'm changing those neural pathways. I'm changing that habit. And it's helping me that every time I'm confronted with those situations, I really stop and I halt and I say, whoa, how else can I see this? Right? And what emotion am I holding on to and habituating in this moment? And for me, it's anger, frustration, and disappointment. And I was like, here it is, showing up again. Hi. Very familiar. And it's egging me on, and it's trying to put me in a position that I reinforce that. People are unreliable. People don't go to bat for me. It's like all those thoughts. Reinforcement. And I'm like, no way, I'm not doing that again. Sorry. Mind, we're on a different page right now. We're going in a different direction.
That's powerful, though, that you have the ability to do that, because I'm sure a lot of people watching and listening, they've been in those circumstances. I mean, we've all been in situations where we have to change a date, and we all go back into that mindset. And we're like, oh my God, I lost my friend Joe, or I lost my friend Susie over exactly that. And now I realize it was my mind that did it. And, maybe I can fix that. Maybe I can't anymore, but at least I know. And tomorrow when it happens, I know how to deal with this better. Now, a couple of things you said there. First of all, I love the breakdown of ACE. It's very much like Compassiviste, because when I came up with that and I thought we need this in the world today, it was basically, okay, compassion, I understand that, but what's the problem? It's not that we don't know compassion or we lack compassion or we don't have the capacity to be compassionate. It's that we don't act on it. And so I was looking for a word, and I realized we don't even have a word in our vocabulary for compassion in action, the active compassion. We have to always say compassion in action or active, or we have to use words to explain it. So I coined Compassiviste essentially to say, this is the activist. This is the person who, works off of compassion. And that's what it is. And I get so excited when people like yourself who know all the science come back and say, you're right. This is exactly what it is, and now we have a word for it. But I want to go back to mindfulness, the word, because you teach a graduate course, which is very different than teaching an undergrad course. Okay. You're not doing the ABCs and intros and stuff with 700 kids in an auditorium. You're, in a concise space with people who are really invested in this. They're at a graduate level. It's a completely different level of education. And all of a sudden you walk in and you're teaching mindfulness, and, the majority of people are going to buzzword mindfulness, right? When you walk into the classroom and there's a new class, before you get to know them, before you kind of get there, how do you break that in their sense, or how do you kind of bring that whole concept of mindfulness together for these students? Because mindfulness has been butchered in every way, whether it's capitalistically for selling products and retreats and stuff that have nothing to do with mindfulness, these luxury retreats and stuff or going to an ashram mindfulness, but there's nothing mindful about it, all the way to many different ways. Take these pills because you'll be more mindful, have these mushroom supplements, you'll be more mindful. So how do you detox and start real mindfulness education? Because I really want people to hear that part.
Yeah. So it's a great question, and I appreciate that question because I think there's so many misunderstandings. So I love when people ask me that question. The word that comes up for me based on what you said before was being blocked. We're all blocked in some way. And there's, like I said, 1,001 factors that keep us blocked. Now, we're also blocked from connecting to our conscious awareness, right? What does that mean? Because again, that's a buzzword, right? Conscious awareness, being in the present moment, in the now, right? All that's beautiful, right? it's really, if you think about, and again, it goes back to the structure of our brain. It always goes back to that, our neurobiology. And we need to understand what that is. Our brain is wired, okay, to be stuck in the past and in the future. Why? Because the past is regrets. Now, we're going to automatically be stuck in the past because our brain is reptilian, like I said, and it has a survival instinct. So it has to remember what happened so that we don't repeat the mistakes in the future or repeat the emotions that we felt during those circumstances or whatever, right? So that we could avoid and distract and do everything we do. Okay. So we're going to inevitably, and that's why we have negative or painful memories that we hold on to, not happy, joyful ones. Those are fleeting. Those are fleeting, right? If I ask you, do you have a memory of something very, very painful? And could you connect viscerally with that emotion? You probably could to some extent. If I say to you, do you have that same experience, but joyful, happy? Could you really connect with the feeling? You probably can't. And we can't. That's why I say, when you're in a moment of joyfulness or like an event or whatever, stop and actually take it in. Right? That's a mindfulness exercise. Just take it, close your eyes or look around you or look in the person's face or whatever it is, connect to it on a somatic level so that you do have, right, that memory of it, because it's going to be fleeting. Unfortunately, that's why we take pictures. That's why we take pictures. Yes, to remind us of that emotion. Otherwise, poof, it's bye-bye. It is. Yeah, it's pretty amazing, right? Mm-hmm. We don't need pictures do we need pictures for pain? No. We'll remember that. We'll remember it. And if you bring up an event that was painful, why is it that we automatically have tears in our eyes? Because we get right to the emotions right away so quickly, So we're blocked. We're constantly blocked and flooded, like I said, and compassion. I love what you said about how you came up with kind of inaction is we don't really, it's more than just feeling it, right? It's doing something about it. And it's deciding from your values, I'm going to go back to that, on how you're going to guide your behavior, right? Because that's what's going to dictate how you behave. And that helps build up your confidence, and it helps build who you are or how you represent yourself in so many fundamental ways. So we always want to connect back to that. I forgot the second part of your question. I'm going to ask you to.
The second part was, how do you fix the misunderstanding of mindfulness when all these kids come in and they have a million different versions of what they believe it is?
I clicked right away. But so interestingly enough, the course that I teach is an elective. Okay. And the thing that my students, they say to me, which I love because it means I'm doing my job. They say to me, every person in the helping profession should take your course. They tell me that all the time. And I'm like, yes, right? Because they recognize as practitioners the value of having this knowledge and teaching it to their clients, right? And that holds true for, I don't care what you're doing in the helping profession. I don't care if you're a physician, whatever, even an attorney. I mean, I think everyone could use it for that matter. But, so a lot of them come in because they're curious. They have no idea what mindfulness is, just like a layperson, actually. It's a range of people. It's some people who have a regular, mindfulness practice, some people who know nothing about mindfulness. So which is also really helpful and lovely to teach, curious. And even the ones who have a practice, they're still curious. There's a lot of curiosity. So mindfulness is an umbrella term. Okay. Under the umbrella of mindfulness, which is what I said, really building up space between the thinking and doing. That's how we have to think about it. So because of our brain going into the past to protect us, that's where I got distracted, the past to protect us, and the future to secure our safety. It's all about safety again, remember? Right? Safety. We're not here. we're losing the present moment because we're always in safety. I mean, it makes sense the way our brain is wired in the way that I just told you, right? So we have to make a conscious effort to be here because we're never here. We're never in the present. Our brain doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. So what does that mean? Mindfulness means being in the present moment on purpose and intentionally without judgment. That's Jon Kabat-Zinn, right? That's his definition, which I think is accurate. And I love that. It's a great definition. So there, under that umbrella of mindfulness, because people get confused, they synonymously say meditation. Meditation is a type of mindfulness. Okay. They're not synonymous. Actually. They're not synonymous. People confuse that. So if you're standing in your shower and you're taking a shower and you close your eyes and you feel the water cascading down your body and you're able to really keep track of what you're thinking, what you're feeling, how you're feeling, what's happening to you in the present moment, that's a mindfulness exercise. We could be doing mindfulness all day long. And I do that. Sometimes I'll walk outside. I walk to my car from my office and I'll just like look around. That is a mindfulness practice. I'm playing with my dog and I'm watching her, kind of putter and catch the doll and bring it to me. And I'm looking at her like so exuberant and excited. And I'm so there with her, and I'm feeling joy in my body that I'm connecting with this little cute animal, right? That I love so much. That provides me with so much love and joyfulness and unconditional love, that's a mindfulness exercise. There's so many different ways of doing mindfulness. There's no one specific way. You don't have to sit on a cushion for hours and hours. That's not what mindfulness necessarily. Some people do that and that's okay for them. Yoga, do something active. You could do a mindful walk. You could do yoga. You could do Tai Chi. I work out. I'm a very avid, kind of exerciser. When I work out, I take moments in my workout to really be intentional and mindful because I get really curious about how my body moves and how it feels. And that's why I reduce my chances of injury because when something doesn't feel quite right, I'm like, okay, not going there. Right. Yeah. So it's helpful. Even like I said, right. If I'm not mindful, I could run the risk of hurting and injuring myself because I'm not really being conscious of like how it's affecting me and what it feels like in my body. I even, and I can't even tell you, how sometimes you have an emotional reaction to something and you sit there and you're like, I don't know why I feel this way. Like what's going on for me? And then it like occurs to you like 2 days later. You're like, oh, that's what was bothering me. And that happens to me, by the way. That's exactly it. We're so not in our conscious awareness sometimes, and it's so subconscious in our deep conscious that we have no clue what is going on for us. And often I do like, something called EMDR, which is like with that light bar behind me, do treatments that get very, very deep into your consciousness. And if I tell you the stuff that comes up that people are like, what? I didn't even know that was in my mind, or I didn't even know that like people are astonished. And I do my own EMDR. I'm in EMDR therapy personally. The stuff that comes up sometimes, I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't even know that that's still in my conscious awareness. Like I had no idea and how it's impacting me. Like absolutely astonishing. It's powerful stuff, really powerful.
It is. And using that last question, I often ask this because I'm interested in what people would do because we're on a mission to social harmony. And, what people say affects how we think about it and how we analyze it. Let's imagine for a moment you're the most powerful person on earth, not in, dominance or anything, but in moral authority, in that kind of influence. What is the action you take to ignite that global shift towards harmony. Because at the end of the day, when you talk about all of the work that you're doing to emphasize compassion, the purpose of that has to be so that we harmonize, so that, you know, even with animals, even with our ecosystems, even with the environment on a global scale, the earth, and then the universe, like it just expands to foreverness, right?
Yeah.
What is the
Yeah.
first thing you do? What is that mandate that you say? We start here.
Yeah, I love what you just asked. It's such a great question. Yeah, thank you for asking it because it's so important, you know, and it's at the heart of my work and, you know, my love, yeah, for life and people and the environment and the world. So the first thing that came into my mind when you said that was really teaching people, you know, again, there's social emotional learning and there's all this other stuff that I think should be part of our education in general. You know, we teach people, you know, academics and about history and math, but we don't teach them how to manage their emotions, for example, you know, or frustration tolerance or all these things that are critical to our human existence. I don't care if you're working in a corporation and you need to do teamwork. Like, I don't care. It just friendships, you know, and there's so many studies, people who are alone and don't connect with others, they're at risk for this and this and this, right? It's fundamental to our humanity. So I think that we need to do a better job at teaching people about the structure of our brain relative to our survival instinct, because that speaks for everything. That speaks for us othering other people.
That's ground zero, really, in education.
Oh my God. Like violence towards.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Right. Like the disdain and the violence and the distance and the othering. I mean, that's the best word for it, right? And it's the othering of other people and othering of ourselves. I want to say that too. It's all the othering that we do because we disconnect not only to other people, we disconnect from ourselves. So I think that to me, that is so fundamental and it is so easy. You know, if you think about it. It is so easy. I have to tell you that it's a big frustration for me because I have gone into school. I have my children's school. I went into their school and I said to them, please, as part of the curriculum, I will give you a way to do it for free. I will give you a way to do it, whatever. We don't have enough time. We have to focus on the academics. That's like more critical. You're building humans here, guys. Like, hello. I mean, my kids, you know, they're sick of me like saying these things. Like my daughter, right? She's 17. She was just 17. But I say, why do you think your mind said that? You know, I'm talking about her mind all the time. But yeah, but like we need to understand that fundamental survival instinct that separates us ourselves and from other people. And that's where I think fundamentally we have to really do a better job.
Thank you, Michelle Maidenberg, for speaking on Compassiviste Dialogues, and thank you for not offering quick fixes like many do. You invite us to do the real and sometimes uncomfortable work of aligning with our truth. In a society that glorifies busy and buries pain, your voice reminds us that presence, honesty, and compassion are the bravest forms of power. So without a question, you are a Compassiviste at heart. That is, the definition was made with, you know, people like you in mind. So, you know, it's all about helping others step into their wholeness so that together as a society, as a community, as a whole, we can heal what's fractured and not other. So I love what you're doing, and I hope we continue this relationship and grow it so that more people can know about what you're doing and about the impact that you can bring into their lives in so many ways. To our audience, please subscribe to Compassiviste Dialogues channel so I can bring you more people like Michelle. And so this voice of people like Michelle really grows on a global scale, because these are the voices that help us make a better world. All links to Michelle Maidenberg are going to be right here listed below, to her nonprofit, to everything she does, and you can get in touch with her. We're here to help the world together. I'm Ali Horia.